You're listening to the Underscore Transformation Podcast, your practical guide to business transformation.
Welcome to the Underscore Transformation Podcast. This is episode 2. My name's Joe Ailes.
And I'm Jason West.
And together we're the founders of Underscore.
And today we're discussing perhaps the most important aspect of transformation, and that's sponsorship. Let's start with the essence of any decent role description. What's the purpose of an exec sponsor, and what are their key accountabilities and responsibilities?
The sponsor's role is the most critical role in the program. They are the ones that are truly accountable for the outcome of any transformation. These individuals are the individuals that set out the vision and the end state of what the transformation is going to deliver. So, frankly, their neck will be on the line if if the transformation is not executed correctly.
Yeah, they are ultimately accountable.
Indeed. So, on taking that into account, Jason, what knowledge, experience, and skills do you think a sponsor really needs?
So I think critical is their knowledge of the organisation. They really need to understand the business. They need to understand its strategy, where it's going. They need to understand the key players, and they need to be highly networked within the executive. So ideally, your sponsor for a transformation should be the person that sits on top of that particular organisation that you're transforming. If it's the whole business, it needs to be the CEO that's the sponsor. If it's a finance function, it really needs to be the CFO. Perhaps if you're transforming finance and HR together, there may be a COO, if that kind of makes sense in your reporting structure. Now, in terms of their experience, ideally, you'd really want somebody that has experience of sponsoring and leading a transformation. But that's not always the case. Not everybody has been through a transformation, let alone led one. So ideally, that's what you'd want. But, there's a lot of this that you have to, learn on the job. In terms of skills, I think there's, there are kind of specific skills, but I think perhaps maybe we talk more about competencies. Have you got some thoughts around kind of the type of competencies that this person's going to have?
They have to be, one of the core competencies from a sponsor, they have to be really authentic. They have to be genuine. People have to believe what the sponsor's saying. People have to believe in a vision, not necessarily sometimes agree with it. These individuals have to be able to lead the business through change. The transformation programs aren't easy to execute. In many cases, they're quite disruptive. They've got to be able to influence and actually coalesce the organization behind what they're trying to achieve. Yeah. And at times, it may not necessarily to everyone's interests across the exec. There might be members of the executive committee that might not necessarily believe that it's the right thing to do, but it's all about having that sense of belief and sense of purpose of what you want to get to.
Yeah, they're going to have to make some tough decisions, tough calls along the way.
Absolutely. And they've got to really be able to articulate to everyone why this change is important, what benefit it's going to drive. And they're the ones that are going to provide that sense of direction to the entire program. The program will be successful largely on the back of the sponsor's capability to drive the program and its program team. Now that we've talked about sort of the core competencies, what should you expect ahead of you if you're in a position of a program sponsor?
I think you've got to expect that it's going to be a lot of hard work. It's not necessarily long hours, although that comes with the joys of being in an exec position. It's those tough decisions. It's the hard yards. It's the coalition building. It's the influencing. It's what Seth Godin refers to as emotional labor. This is the really hard stuff. It's about taking people with you and influencing and really driving to a better place, a better outcome, and having that belief that you've well articulated there. It's about constantly problem solving. We define a vision, we define where we're going, we're really clear about it, but then we need to build support. So during the scoping phase, there's so many priorities the organizations have, and you need to understand what are my exec colleagues doing, what are the big change initiatives, what are the big strategic initiatives that we have as a business, and how can I get my program align to one of those particular strategic outcomes we're trying to deliver, and get funding, get support, get that kind of coalition of the willing together. So during this scoping phase, it's really about, you are selling. That's what it's about. You are selling and building that team of people around you that's going to help you get to this place.
Because frankly, if the transformation that you're trying to achieve isn't aligned to the business strategy, if it's not important to anybody else other than you, it's not going to get the coalition you need.
Yeah.
So one of the key things that the sponsor does have to think about is about aligning, getting interests aligned across the organisation.
Yeah, and in these roles, where do people typically fall down in the role of program sponsor? Where?
I mean, we've seen it, haven't we?
Yes.
We've seen it in one or two occasions in many programs where the sponsor's role wasn't being performed as effectively as it could have been.
Yeah.
Really, the likely outcome is an unsuccessful program. And I think there are a number of pitfalls, I guess, sponsors need to avoid. I've seen in many examples where the sponsor performs the role of an ambassador.
Yeah.
Not close enough to the detail. And if you're not close enough to the detail, you're not really able to sort of influence and drive the right design decisions in the program. You're not able to really direct the program. And more importantly, actually, you're not able to influence a stakeholder group that you need to influence. I've also seen programs where the sponsor isn't necessarily the one that's ultimately accountable for the result.
Yeah.
So they've not got that vested interest, i.e. their career isn't necessarily at stake if the program's successful or not.
Yeah, so the sponsor's delegated the role of sponsor to somebody that reports to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or actually the sponsor isn't necessarily the one ultimately accountable for the effectiveness of the transformation.
Yeah.
So maybe a CFO is a sponsor for a people transformation program.
Yes.
Absolutely, where you got multiple functions, having one sponsor is important, and maybe making the right choice between a finance sponsor or a people sponsor. Or maybe, to your point earlier, maybe you have an external sponsor, a COO or even a CEO, for instance, in some businesses.
You're listening to the Underscore Transformation Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Underscore, the transformation capability specialists. To find out more, visit underscore-group.com.
I think that we've also come across situations where there are two sponsors for a program. And
yes.
Obviously, the more people that are accountable, the less people are accountable.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever really seen it work.
No.
Sometimes during the scoping phase, whilst we're not really sure who is ultimately going to sponsor this program, having more than one sponsor is just about manageable. But crikey, when you get to implementation, if there's not one individual who is holding themselves to account and is being held to account by the board for delivering the outcome, I have no confidence in that as a sensible governance structure.
It just makes it difficult, doesn't it? If you've got two individuals that you've got to seek opinion from, unless those two individuals are absolutely joined at the hip and have got the exact same mindset and same sort of vision.
Yes, yeah.
Then perhaps it can be successful. But
yeah, possibly.
That doesn't often happen. So
it's rare, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So you will have two individuals with two different sort of interests and ultimately ambitions and goals. And there is a chance that the program team who's sitting beneath the sponsors will get two different sides of the story. And then it just creates confusion, havoc, causes delays to projects, unhappy people, and the likelihood of the program being successful is low.
So I think perhaps if we just leave on some thoughts, really, some advice maybe for program sponsors, perhaps new into the role. I think there's a number of really critical points to consider here. And the first one is about how you resource your program and your project teams. And the first piece of advice is really resource those teams like your career depends on it, because there's a very good chance that it does.
Yes.
And the way you go about resourcing those teams, the decisions you make about the external consultants you bring in, the roles on that program team that you're reserving for members of your permanent operational team is critical, those decisions. Also, where you're bringing in contractors, we see it so often on these transformation programs where there's literally a brief description in a phone call that I need a program manager that has delivered this type of project before or this type of program before. And they need to have this experience and that experience, and we want to pay £1,200 a day. That's it. There's no job description, there's no role profile, there's certainly no competencies attached to it, there's no real selection process beyond a chat and an unstructured interview. And if you think about how much impact these people in these roles are going to have on your personal standing in the organisation and career, I think it's something that actually spending a bit more time and attention on who you're bringing in to deliver these programs is probably time well spent. The other thing is around design decisions, and to your point, getting into the detail and really understanding those critical design decisions and what that's going to mean in the real world. So making sure that you're championing the experience of your users out there. So the customers of your service, whether they're external customers or internal customers, the decisions that are being taken are, yes, going to deliver your business case and, yes, going to comply with your design principles that you lay out, but also that they're going to have a positive impact on people that are engaging in the processes that you put in place, the systems and the teams that are out there. The other thing is to be really mindful of risks and issues and really drill down into those areas of risk on a program, and making sure that if somebody's reporting something as an issue, that something is actually going wrong, they've got really meaningful mitigation plans in place to deal with it. Just understanding the difference between a risk and an issue, that's kind of a good place to start. Right. And it's surprising how many program sponsors, they don't know what the difference is. So risk being something that hasn't happened yet, that's avoidable, that we could take steps and it won't become a problem. An issue is a problem that exists and it is causing pain today. So really important to kind of focus on those areas during steering committee meetings and the like. And also be utterly demanding within the program. So of your program team and of your senior leadership team, be utterly demanding to get the best possible outcome for the business, for your team, for your customers that you serve. But temper that with absolutely championing your team to the wider business. You're going through change. Things are going to get difficult. Business operation, your day-to-day operations are going to get worse before they get better. Really providing that air cover and that support and championing your team and the change is absolutely critical. But you can do both. You can be externally championing and defensive, but internally critical and robust.
Absolutely.
They're the kind of the key takeaways, I think, for me, that, if I could sit down with any sponsor and say, before we begin, I'd really like to just cover these points and just make sure we're all aligned on this.
So we would love to hear your feedback. Perhaps you're a program sponsor and are looking for some support, or maybe you're a program team tasked with delivering transformation, change, or even perhaps somebody who's exposed to transformation. Please contact the show via our WhatsApp group or via our website, _group.com. And if you enjoyed the episode, please remember to like and subscribe via your favorite podcast directory. Next Thursday, we will be publishing episode 3, where we will be discussing the next critical success factor, problem definition. Thanks very much for listening.